Hey everybody, I'm back. It's Barbara. And I'm back with what I started with. It's another 1/6 box, another loot crate for us dog collectors. And this one is called Witches and Wizards Part 1. It's the first of two boxes that will have a mystical, magical feel to them. In this particular box, we were given the wood, and it is wood, potion table, a cauldron, a remint blind box, which I will open up for us in a little bit, and another box of goodies. And in that box of goodies should be a non-opening book, a glass volumetric flask, and a brain in a jar. That should be tasty. Alright guys, let's go ahead and start by looking at the table itself, which I did say was wood. It has a very sturdy structure with a bracing piece of wood between the four legs to maintain balance. There's also a bracing piece of wood, let's say going north to south between the legs on both sides, and then east to west would be this other bracing piece. The wood is varnished and it is solid. Besides being a potion table, this would also be ideal for, I guess, like a high table buffet. You could use it also, by the way, to do drafting, or, you know, like if your doll is a dressmaker, she could have her drafting materials on here, or other kinds of mechanical work. And it's sturdy enough that I think we're going to go ahead, and as we debox things, I'm just going to go ahead and put them on top of the box. So let's go ahead and start that. I'm actually quite glad that Melissa of 1/6 Box decided to do this, because I had wondered how big or how small the science room pieces were. And if this works out, this means, guys, that this particular line, besides science room, they have other classroom bits that might also translate very well for our fashion dolls and for our action figures. So let's go ahead and see what's in the box. This looks to be a Bunsen burner with some kind of, I almost want to say this is like, which would, making a sponge toffee. Aha! So basically this is what's called post-doc cooking, that you're stuck in the lab, you get hungry, you clean the Bunsen burner and your equipment really good, and you make dinner. It comes with a full layout, unfortunately it's in Japanese so I can't read it, of the schematics of the Bunsen burner, and a little cartoon, which kind of reminds me of a similar themed comic in the US called PhD Comics, where they would in fact have characters cooking in the lab, which they shouldn't be cooking. And then on the back, you have all the possible pieces that would come with it. And here it is wrapped up. Now, I'm just gonna grab, do not try this at home. I'm thinking that this, besides doubling as a Bunsen burner, might also, if you are able to remove the plastic gas tubing carefully, it would make for an interesting kind of candle. Or if you are a creative type, you might be able to put over this some kind of decorative paper lamp, so you have like a dorm room setting. Again, very, somebody in the sciences in a dorm would do that. So that's one piece. Obviously, this is the toffee souffle. And that's pretty interesting because you're not only getting a piece of science equipment, you're also getting another wonderful piece of remint food. Having never had a toffee souffle, I would say that this could also very easily double as your standard ordinary American roll that you would throw butter on. You have this stick of some kind, and you also have this is really, you can't call it a frying pan, and I'm sorry I don't know what kind of a pan this is, but this is pretty much the kind of pan you would use to put over a burner, like so, and heat up a chemical of some kind to have the reaction you need for your experiment. In this case, you put the souffle over it so it rises just so. And I appreciate that kind of humor. And if you were telling a story, you could say that, you would do some kind of incantation over it, and this would be a magical souffle that the person who eats it would fall madly in love with you. Of course, that's very well in keeping with the way to a person's heart is through their stomach. Let's go ahead and see what's inside this box, which should be, by the way, the other items. So let's go ahead and unwrap this and see what's in there. Inside this OSB exclusive box, we have several different items. We have this one that's wrapped up in tissue paper, which is in fact a candle. Very nicely. It's a candle that obviously looks like it's been used. You have the wax trailing down. You have something at the top that does feel like a wick that's been burned before, but is still sturdy enough that it's going to hold. It's not going to snap right away to your touch. So I like that it's very firm. We'll put the two candles together. This is also very interesting. You have this very large spoon, you have a flask, and you have a key. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull the spoon out first. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because this spoon is quite large. And I think ultimately it's supposed to be used with the cauldron, which I will do later in the video, but I wanted to tell you that this is the right proportion that going into the 18th and 19th and even the early 20th century, this would be the kind of spoon you would put a chemical in and then put it over the burner to create a reaction. So proportionally and scientifically, that is completely correct. We have this flask. And the flask is wonderful because you can do many things with it. Of course, obviously, you use it for science. But you could also use it as a very simple vase with a couple of stems in it. This will also particularly work well with the International Fashion Doll Collectors Convention dolls from this past year. If you guys remember, Integrity Toys made the dolls. The dolls were in a movie where they had to rescue a scientist and his special formula. So this could work very nicely in a lab set if you wanted to create such a thing for those dolls. We have the key. Always very romantic. I'm going to go ahead probably toward the end of this video and grab one of the dolls to see how it would fit in their hands, because keys are very tricky, whether or not what scale this is. But this looks to be the right kind of scale for a much larger skeleton key. to be or not to be? That is the question. 'Tis nobler to have a science diorama without the gratuitous skull. But if it's available, you might as well. So here is the skull. Again, in wizardry, in magic, incantations are made with bones. Also used in the sciences, in the real hard sciences as reference. Another finely wrapped, tissued. And here we have the potion. I do believe, unless I'm completely insane, this says, and I'm trying to see if I can get the balance to kick in, I do believe it says Ogre of Snout. Let me get it a little closer to me so I can actually read it. Actually, it's worse than that. It says Ogre Snot. Ogre Snot. How do you make a tissue dance? Well, you put a little boogie in it. That's the magic of snot. Be here all week, everybody. Try the veal. Our final tissue wrap, which I'm guessing has to be the brain in the jar. And it's pink. So I'm guessing this is in fact Pinky of Pinky and the Brain. Goblin Ganglin, it says, on this bottle. There is other writing. My vision is not spectacular. I'm going to take this off camera for a second and see if I can read it. I'm sure it says something. If I had a magnifying glass, I would read it to you, but that is for you to enjoy. Another reason to get your hands on this box so you can read it for yourself. Here's the brain. Rough guess that it is the right scale for 1/6 scale. Not that anyone's ever put organs inside of action figures or fashion dolls, but I'm guessing if you cut a head open, you could do that. Interestingly, there is something here hinting toward the brainstem, that back part of the brain. So this is fairly scientifically accurate. Put this back in here. Put the cork back on. What's nice is that both jars, if you were so inclined, you could take out what's in them and then soak the jar and the labels would come off, and then you could use them in any kitchen diorama that you wished, if you wanted to. As promised, we were also promised 3 books. We were told they do not open, which is fine. Though they do appear to be gold trimmed, which is in keeping with the Victorian era. Let's pull them out one by one. Have a look. This first one does not appears to be ancient Egyptian. Does not have any discernible writing on it. And does not open, though it does, though the edges are finely trimmed, that you can tell that there are, it's cut like there would be pages. The next one is the Tales of Beetle the Bard, which I'm guessing was a hero of the neoclassical magic movement. Again, the edges of the, I almost want to say it's styrofoam, have been darkened and slightly cut so it looks like pages. And lastly, we have another book that does not have a title but lovely artwork on the front. with the trimmings around to make it look like it is a book that has lines on it. And finally, we have the cauldron. This is the kind of cauldron you're going to see a lot of in a couple months in Halloween. It is plastic, it is not cast iron, otherwise the shipping on this would have been exponentially high, weight-wise, if this was anything but plastic. It does have depth to it that you could fill it with, let's say, colored throw in some styrofoam, as I'm doing, color it, make it look like bubbles, and you can have a sort of bubbly effect. Though, because it's plastic, you really could not put anything warm in here. What you could do, if you were so inclined, take the handle off, turn it right side up, and it almost looks like the first Submariner helmets. If you ever wanted to go that way, instead of, in the sci-fi fantasy going from magic into science fiction, you could make this into a Submariner helmet. So the last thing I want to do is I'm going to grab one of my action figures and see how this all measures up scale-wise. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay guys, I figured for the last part I would take the practical magic route, if you guys remember that movie, and have my me doll come out in her lovely dress and demonstrate the scale, starting with the spoon. As you can see, it's one that would fit in both hands. And by the way, it does also fit. Well, actually goes all the way into the cauldron, so you would have to do that pose of having the rubber band and mixing. We have the key. Which I hope I can balance. The key fits nicely in her hand. Again, it's the right proportion for an older Gothic cabinet. I happen to have one. Made years and years ago. I shouldn't even mention it, but I just did. Oh well. But this would work if you have a large Victorian door or a large Victorian box. That's the kind of key that would fit in it. You would need to put rubber band or ticky tap into her hand for her to hold this. But this is, again, the right proportion for Bunsen burner for a 1/6 scale figure. I'm just going to pull her forward and tuck her arm in like she was carrying. You could probably, oops, yeah, that works. You could tuck the books under her arm like she was carrying them to a table, so that's a completely appropriate scale. So this is all very nicely scaled for her, and it all works. And now I will just move her back behind her table. And there you have it. This is the first of the Witches and Wizards 1/6 scale accessory box. You have a great place to start. All the modern day and Gothic elements are combined. The potion bottles, the books, the modern day Bunsen burner, with the magic food. The very authentic, even to the human scale, spoon. The skull, the candle, the cauldron. Obviously on this gorgeous, incredibly solid and well-made table. So this is definitely one that if you can get your hands on it, you should. If it's sold out, you definitely want to go for box 2, which is coming. That'll be box number 6. Appropriately, if you go by the whole 666, that will be Witches and Wizards box 2, which is ultimately box number 6 in the series. I definitely recommend getting it. So from my dear friend, and from me, and from all of these goodies, I wish you happy playing, and I will see you probably in the middle of September to talk about Witches and Wizards Part 2. Take care.